Hey there, Dr. Justin Marcagiani. Today we'll be chatting about electrolytes. Why do I have electrolyte problems? We'll be talking about some of the root causes and also some of the symptoms that may show that you have electrolyte issues. Before we do, please smash that like button. Really helps with the search algorithm. Put your comments and questions down below. Love to see those. All right, let's dive in. So when we talk about electrolytes, what does that mean? So you have typically sodium and chloride or your typical your sea salt type of electrolytes. These are important. A lot of people get a lot of these from processed food. They just don't get good quality electrolytes, good quality sea salt from like a nice trace mineral support or a Celtic or a Himalayan or a Redmond's real salt. So I like good salts like that, either in your water to start the day can be really good with a little bit of lime or lemon. That can be great because you're getting some vitamin C, maybe some potassium in there, a little bit of acidification so it can get your digestive system going a little bit. And then you're getting some electrolyte and some minerals. That's excellent. Now, when you have a lot of adrenal stress or you're just stressed in general, or if let's say you eat a little more processed carbohydrates and sugar, magnesium is a big one. Magnesium is an important mineral. According to the CDC, it's got like 300 different plus enzymatic reactions in the body. So it helps with blood sugar and sleep and relaxation, tons of different things. But when you have low magnesium or you don't get enough, which about 50% of the population don't, then it's going to be a problem. So every time you eat processed carbs or sugar, you're going to go through more magnesium. The more stressed you are, you go through more magnesium. So magnesium is something really easy to be low in. Potassium, that's a big one too. So magnesium, I'd say you need like 500 to milligrams to a gram or so, 1,000 milligrams. Again, it depends on the kind of magnesium. If you're, food type of magnesium or magnesium citrate, you probably need a little more. Supplementally, if you're getting like malate or glycinate, that's a very well absorbed magnesium, you probably need a little bit less. Again, magnesium oxide, you may not absorb as much because it's more for laxative support. So it just depends on the quality of magnesium. You have the higher quality, glycinate, malate, maybe threonate. You have like magnesium sulfate and Epsom salts, which you can absorb transdermally through your feet or through your body soaking in a tub. Then you have like your cheaper magnesium, like in Naturalcom, which is like a magnesium citrate, which is still good. It's still not bad at all, especially if your diet's good. It may be enough to get the job done. And then you have like your magnesium oxides or your elemental oxygenated magnesium, which are more for motility. Those are your big magnesiums. Now, potassium, most people don't get enough, right? The DRI, the daily recommended intake, is about 45 to 4,700 milligrams. That's about 4.7 grams. Potassium is really important because you have this sodium potassium pump, right? Here's your cell. You have sodium on the outside, potassium on the inside, and they have to do this switcheroo dance, which is called the sodium potassium pump, so your cell can function and communicate properly. So if you don't have enough electrolytes or enough sodium, or you're dehydrated because you drink too much caffeine or too much soda drinks, too much diuretics, right? Tea kind of fits into that category. You're going to be lower in sodium. Also, if you don't get enough potassium, that 4,700 milligram, and again, I challenge everyone listening, go on to chronometer.com and just punch in your simple daily routine, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. You're going to find you're probably at between 22,000 milligrams and 2,700 milligrams. Again, I kind of do this math with patients all the time because I know what foods have it. And so most are in that mid 2,000 range, so not even close. And so that can play a really big role with stress. It can really affect your cells functioning properly. Now, I would say, so we have potassium, magnesium, those are the real hard ones. Calcium's also can be a big deal, right? Calcium can be, magnesium's a bigger one. Typically calcium, you get that in some of your leafy greens. You may get it in some dairy products. Again, if you're not doing dairy, obviously leafy greens are going to be your big sources. Maybe you get some from like good quality bone broths. Maybe you're getting some from your leafy greens. Again, one of the sites I like to use for like what foods are really good for nutrition. Myfooddata.com is a great one because if you go there and you look at food lists, then you click on the vitamins or minerals, you click on calcium. The problem with the website does not factor in the anti-nutrients. So if it says soy is high in something or beans are high in something, well, it's not factoring in the nutrient absorption because when you have anti-nutrients there, that will decrease the absorption. So you have to kind of factor that in, which is kind of general nutrition knowledge of what's going to have high amounts of anti-nutrients because it'll have tofu as your number one source of calcium. Not going to happen because there's too many issues with the absorption there. Skim milk, again, you get a lot of casein, get a lot of lactose, could be very inflammatory. So I wouldn't work on those. Again, if you have high quality raw milk and you can tolerate it, great. Low fat yogurt, same kind of thing. Parmesan, same kind of thing. Again, if you can handle a high quality, raw cheese, mozzarella, fine. If not, most people have casein issues, lactose issues, not going to be the best. Spinach, that's pretty good. You get 20% of your daily value in just 100 milligrams. That's not much. That's about 3 ounces. So spinach is good. Black-eyed peas, not bad. But again, Again, bioavailability, a lot of anti-nutrients there. Okra is a big one. Trout, there you go. So trout's good. So any fish is going to be excellent. Squash is really good. Seafood's really good. Clams are really good. So it kind of gives you a couple little options of what you could do that are going to be more on the healthier side. That kind of gives you just a good idea out of the gate. And then regarding sodium, again, getting that through good high quality sea salt is going to be excellent. Magnesium, we already talked about that. Let's go over top magnesium foods real quick. Let's go make sense of those. Again, your leafy greens are always going to be a good one. You're going to get some in some starches. Okay. Let me see if I can put this. I'm going to see if I can share this on my screen with y'all. Instagram people will not be able to see it, but that's okay. I'm on YouTube. So if you guys are on YouTube, feel free or on Instagram, feel free to jump over to my YouTube channel and you can see it. Okay. This is going to go live in just one sec, y'all. Thanks for being super patient. Okay, here we go. All right, here we go. So let's go over the highest calcium foods. I already mentioned that. We talked about the bioavailability, right? Tofu, skim milk, not going to be the best. Yogurt, again, if you want to do some dairy products, just make sure the quality is good, raw, pasture-fed. That's better because a lot of hormones and junk in dairy if the cows are conventionally raised. Spinach is going to be good. We talked about peas, bioavailability. If you're going to do them, soak them 24 hours. That's going to take away a lot of the lectins and anti-nutrients. Trout, fish, really good. Seafood, oysters, squash, excellent. So these are some good options. Now, let's go back and look at magnesium briefly here. Go to my food list, go over magnesium. Again, leafy greens, I think, so out of the gate, you're going to see leafy greens really high here. You're going to see things like dark chocolate. You're going to see things like squash, sweet potato. You'll even see some animal products pretty high here. So spinach, pumpkin seeds, really good. Can be excellent, very high in zinc as well. So again, your beans, soak them better, right? Still not the best, still 2/3 starch. Tuna, excellent. Brown rice, got to be careful with that though. If you're gluten sensitive, almonds, nuts, seeds, again, same thing here. Sprouted, much better. Then we go to dark chocolate, good quality, 85%, right? Cacao, most people don't do that. Most are doing a lot of sugar involved there. Avocados, really high in potassium too. Excellent in magnesium. This is a win-win. And then you can see bananas. Most people, when they think potassium, they think what? They think bananas, right? But then when you go look at avocado, it's about 50% more potassium and magnesium than bananas, which is pretty cool. And then you can go look at the next foods here real quick. Oh, so these are other fruits: dried figs, avocados, bananas, guava, kiwi. Just give you an idea. All right, so now let's go look at potassium real fast. Potassium is really important. Those are the foods I think I mentioned earlier. Let's hit your potassium ones. So salmon, beet greens, super important out of the gate. So some of your beans, soak them. Avocado, super high, right? Look at 21%, almost a gram per avocado. Potatoes are surprisingly really nutrient dense. You get a lot of potassium in potato. Again, if you want to decrease the anti-nutrients, peel it. I cook mine in an Instapot. Just fill it up just a little bit, about that much with water, and then just 15 minutes on the high setting. Excellent mashed potatoes. Put some good ghee or high quality Kerrygold in there with some sea salt. You're ready to roll. You get some of the you get the potassium going. You got some of the sodium going there too. Squash is a double win, right? So there's a lot of nutrients. Squash can be very high in nutrients here. So some white button mushrooms, bananas, and you can see here, like bananas have about 50% less potassium than magnesium, even though potassium, the gold standard, you always think is a banana. Tomatoes, so that gives you a pretty good idea. If you look at see all 200 foods in potassium, you can kind of scroll down that way as well. So I hope that makes sense for you guys. Now, let's kind of connect it and make it a little bit more relevant clinically. So we have these different electrolytes. We have food sources. So it's always good to look at your food sources, good proteins, good fats. You can look at some of the vegetables, whether it's non-starchy carbs, whether it's starchy carbs. Starchy carbs can still be pretty good. Again, you got to look at the insulin resistance component and how active you are. The more active you are and the less insulin resistant, play around with adding some starch, especially if it's nutrient dense. Again, you got to look at the bioavailability and the inflammation aspect of foods. Just because skim milk or some of this dairy is high in magnesium or let's say calcium, there may be a bioavailability issue and you may create inflammation in your gut that actually decreases the absorption. So keep that in mind. I always say inflammation reducing first, nutrient density second. So just keep that in mind. Now, supplement wise, potassium is a really hard one to get with food. So I use one called Potassium Synergy. One scoop's like 1,300 milligrams. You basically have a quarter to a third of almost all your potassium in one day in a scoop. That's great to get you over the limit. I just say, look at your day, run breakfast, lunch, and dinner, see how high you are in potassium, see if you can plug in an extra avocado, see if you can plug in a serving of squash, sweet potato, see if you can plug in a serving of tuna or salmon. These are great ways to get yourself over the top. And then from there, you can say, okay, let me plug in maybe a little bit extra potassium or magnesium. Those are the easy ones to supplement, and then maybe a good quality sea salt on top of that. Now, I would say out of the gates, the big potassium or magnesium symptoms, you could just have blood sugar issues. You're insulin resistant. That's a great sign you need more magnesium. You're on potentially a diuretic blood pressure medication that can cause you to go low in these nutrients. Now, taking more of those could raise your blood sugar or could raise your blood pressure as well. So you have to work on getting the inflammation down and then maybe start lowering those medications as long as you're monitoring and working with your doctor. And you can start adding these things back in. You may feel you do very good because you actually need these for healthy vasculature and good function. You could have just cramping, right? That cramping just in your arms, your legs. You could have fasciculations. People will see it if they don't sleep well. They'll kind of have that eyebrow twitch, or they'll have like a little twitch in their hand, right? That little fasciculation. Just those nerves are at threshold, a higher threshold because of cortisol, and that can also impact your minerals. You can go into Guyton's Physiology, which is a medical textbook that I use in doctorate school or MDs use in medical school. You'll see in there when you go into the adrenal section, it talks about cortisol. When high levels of cortisol are present, especially due to excess adrenal stress, you can actually dump out some of your minerals. You can dump out potassium through the kidneys. And so sometimes just being more stressed can cause you to need more potassium and need more electrolytes. And so the first thing is make sure your diet's good. But if you know you're more stressed, don't be afraid to dump in some adaptogens, which will help you with the adrenal stress, which will then calm down that cortisol axis, that HPA axis, and that will help you hold on to minerals. And if you throw in some extra sea salt and you throw in some potassium as well, you're good. If you start adding more potassium in and you feel worse, or you add more sodium in and you feel worse, there is that sodium-potassium ratio. And so sometimes with adrenal issues, you could actually have very low sodium on a CMP, which is a comprehensive metabolic panel blood test, but you could have high potassium. How does that happen? And so if your adrenals go artificially low because your adrenals are stressed and you're starting to lower your aldosterone levels, aldosterone affects how you hold on to electrolytes. So if your adrenals are more stressed, you may be peeing out your sodium, and that could also cause your potassium to look artificially high, but it's not. So typically I just tell patients, make sure you supplement sodium and potassium at the same time, because that may help you kind of balance things out and not kind of knock that seesaw off a little bit. Again, magnesium, you can do it morning and night. It just depends on how someone feels with magnesium. If I do a malate magnesium, that tends to work better for energy because malate plugs into the Krebs cycle and can be used as a Krebs cycle intermediary nutrient. Again, if you get really sedated or relaxed, I'll just do more later in the day to kind of calm you down and relax, and less during the day. And then usually potassium, I'll start the day with that for sure, just because that's really helpful for muscles and contraction and that sodium potassium pump. Again, calcium, I'll typically use a lactate form or a malate form, a couple 100 milligrams. It's just going to depend upon how good your diet is and where you're at. I find magnesium and potassium are my big ones I focus on. Typically, I don't need to jump on the calcium one. And so outside of that, the key thing is you got to look at the food sources. We kind of went over that. We went over the supplement sources. All right. So with magnesium, citrate is a cheaper form. We can do malate. We can do glycinate for magnesium. We can do aspartate. We can do threonate, good for blood brain. We can do Epsom salt. That's a magnesium sulfate. On the calcium side, we can do a calcium lactate or calcium malate's fine. On the sodium side, we're going to do just a good quality sea salt. I'll put some brands down below on Amazon, but I like the Redmond's Real Salt, the Celtic Himalayan. Make sure it's ground up really nice and fine. Sometimes the big ones, they're just so heavy. You put them in your water, you stir them up, they just sink right to the bottom. So I like the Redmond's because it's fine. They have two. They have the kosher, and then they have the fine ground. You want the fine one because I find when you put it in your water, it's small enough where you stir it up, it'll float, and you can drink it easily. So I like that. And then you could put it on your food as well. Just a pinch, enough to salt it to taste. You can also put a little bit in your water. A pinch as well can be very great. I drink a Topo Chico mineral water during the day when I'm seeing patients. And then I'll typically do RO filtered water during the day, like morning. My coffee will be filtered with that at night. And I have a post filter on my RO. So it does add minerals back in. And I leave a little trace mineral support called Endure, and I'll just put a couple drops in that to get my electrolytes. I also do have a whole house system, which is good. So my RO essentially has most of the junk already filtered out, so it does a better job with it. So if you have RO water, be careful because it will lower the electrolytes in it. So you have to be more, let's say, on top of adding electrolytes in. I always tell patients it's easier to add electrolytes in than pull toxins out. Toxins are much more concerning to me, especially with pesticide runoff, glyphosate. People are, especially with women, they're peeing out their birth control pills or hormones that gets into the water facility, and we're not filtering those out. We're only filtering out microbes and bugs. We're not filtering out hormones. We're not filtering out SSRIs or drugs in the urine. So I get very concerned about that. Now, the good thing is a good activated charcoal filter should take a lot of that out. Now, you also run it through an RO filter, which is a semi-permeable membrane between 3 and 6 stages. Now you get everything out. Like you're 100% good. So just an FYI in that. And you look at that that vinyl chloride spill on that train last month in East Palestine. You can filter out vinyl chloride in just a really good charcoal filter, 95, 98%. And so just FYI, a lot of these plastic compounds, which vinyl chloride is, can easily be filtered out with a good filter. All right, guys, hope that makes sense. So get your adrenals looked at. Utilize good food sources first, good stress reduction sources. We can also be on top of adaptogens to kind of help calm the adrenals down. And then we can add in additional electrolyte support products. Again, I'll put the ones that I specifically use with myself and patients down below so you can see. Any questions, feel free and chime in, y'all. I'm going to hit some of your questions here out of the gate. Hey, Angela, hope you're doing good. I'll get your question here. Is it true that you have to have a sugar component in your electrolyte supplement in order for them to work and be effective? So when you do eat more carbs, the insulin that you make does hold on to electrolytes a little bit better. That's part of the reason why people get like incredibly bloated when they have high insulin, because insulin holds on to sodium and sodium holds on to water. So yeah, one of the big side effects of being more ketogenic is you may need more electrolytes. And that is true, but that's typically for most people, that's just, I would say it's not really a problem unless you're doing a lot of exercise and you're also low carb. Then you may need to add a little bit more carbs in because that will help with electrolytes and it will help with your exercise. It just depends on how active you are. And then you can work on adjusting some higher carb electrolyte sources. That's even better because then it's a whammy, a double whammy, right? So that would be sweet potato, squash. It could even be a little bit of coconut water post-workout on the potassium side. It could even be a little avocado with your meals. Good questions there. But for most people, I'm not worried about that. I'd much rather have them go lower carb, lower the insulin, and then supplement a little bit of electrolytes if needed. Most are already low in potassium, magnesium anyway. Okay, great. Excellent. Let me hit some questions here. I like to add a lot of salt to my water, to my carnivore diet, and that seems to help me. Yes, I totally agree. Again, if you're doing a lot of carnivore stuff, there are some good starchy carb nutrients in potato and squash. And again, if you're not eating those, sometimes it can be a little bit harder to get those minerals in. And again, you may need a little bit more if the insulin goes a little bit lower, because insulin does help hold on to the electrolytes, even to the detriment of some. Good questions. Do you think sodium is the cause of most high blood pressure or just severe lack of potassium and other electrolytes? Yeah, so sodium is definitely, it's an innocent bystander, right? The sodium is blamed not because of sodium by itself. There's actually a good meta-analysis on this. I think they contribute like sodium, maybe 2 to 3 blood pressure points. A good reference on this is James DiNicolantonio. He's a pharmacist and he's written a book on salt. And so it's a very minor increase. The big deal with salt, it's the high levels of insulin that cause you to retain more sodium, which then causes the blood volume or the volume in your arteries to go up, which then increases the blood pressure and makes it harder on your heart to pump. Not the sodium per se, it's going to be the high levels of insulin. Great question. Awesome. Yeah, okra is great, and it's really good for gut healing. I think I have okra in my GI Restore because it's just a really good gut healing component. Okra, I think, is also very high in the vitamin U, which is good for gut lining and healing. Yeah, what about mung beans? Not sure about mung beans, but again, the big difference with beans is they tend to be 2/3 to 3/4 starch. So make sure you can handle the starch, and then if you're going to do it, make sure it's soaked for 24 hours or so, just to kind of break down some of the anti-nutrients. What adaptogens do you recommend? So my favorite out of the gate is going to be ashwagandha, just because there's good data on it. You can almost use it if you're low or high. That's why I like it. If you have very low cortisol, it can be used. If you have very high, it can be very calming. I'll use ginseng to bump people up that are chronically low, especially in the morning time. Some adaptogens at night that we'll do to kind of be very calming. We'll do like lemon balm or valerian. Those can be very good at night, very relaxing. We'll even do things like holy basil can be good. And then you just have things like rhodiola, which I'll use more if there's more mood issues. Ashwagandha, definitely if there's more sleep issues. And then there's some other ones that we can use that are more on the male or female side, whether it's maca or tongkat ali or hoshi wu or tribulus. Those could be really good. Damiana for females is also good. High cortisol in the morning, high DHEA. Yeah, so high cortisol in the morning. So your DHEA high in the morning could be actually more of a biological way of your body trying to drop down the cortisol. And then it really just about the rest of the day. How does the rest of the day look? If your cortisol is just high in the morning and levels out, that could just be part of that dawn phenomenon or that like cortisol awakening response. It really depends upon the rest of the day and how that looks. But also gut inflammation at night. So when you have gut bugs, they tend to be more active at night. And that inflammation from nighttime of them being active and partying, right, that can spill into a higher cortisol in the morning. So depending on kind of what your gut looks like, we may want to look deeper there too. But that may or may not be the thing, but you have to just kind of look at the whole picture. Chamomile tea makes my mouth dry. Yeah, chamomile is also very relaxing and good as well. All right, guys, awesome. Appreciate you diving in here with me and connecting and asking some good questions. If you want to dive in and reach out, again, my coordinates will be below in the description. If you want to reach out to my team, we'll be happy to help you out, get to the root cause of what's going on with your health issues. We see patients worldwide, so here to help you if you need. All right, guys, have a phenomenal day. You take care. Bye now.